All right, let's talk about the mobile system design interview. If you're a mobile developer, you know this one. It can be pretty intimidating, right? But what if I told you there's a structured way to absolutely nail it? Today, we're going to pull back the curtain on this interview and give you a clear, step-by-step roadmap to success.
So you walk into the interview, and you get hit with a question just like this. Design a newsfeed app. It's huge. It's so open-ended, and your mind just starts racing, right? Are they asking about the UI, the network calls, caching, offline mode? It's that first moment of, whoa, where do I even start? That can really throw you off your game. And that, right there, is the real secret. The hardest part of a system design interview isn't about writing some perfect piece of code. Nope. It's about managing the chaos of a problem that isn't clearly defined. If you don't have a plan, the whole conversation can just spiral, and you and the interviewer both end up feeling totally lost.
But we are going to fix that. Here's our game plan. First, we'll talk about how to tackle the interview itself. Then, I'm going to give you a super powerful 5-step framework. We'll break it down into 3 main phases: clarify and contract, architect and analyze, and finally, conclude with confidence. This is your path from chaos to clarity.
Okay, let's jump into our first section, tackling the design interview. The whole goal here is to take that overwhelming feeling of chaos and turn it into a structured, clear conversation. And it all starts with having a solid game plan.
And this is so important to understand. Unlike a typical coding problem that might have 1, maybe 2 right answers, system design is a different beast entirely. There are tons of valid approaches. Your job isn't to magically guess the one perfect solution. It's to show that you have a logical, methodical process for arriving at a really good one.
And that brings us to the heart of this whole thing, the 5-step framework. Seriously, think of this as your roadmap. It's a guide you can use for pretty much any mobile system design problem they throw at you, making sure you hit all the critical points along the way.
So, here are the 5 steps. First, we understand the problem and lock down the scope. Then, we design the APIs. After that, we sketch out the high-level architecture. Then we dive deep into the most interesting parts, and finally, we wrap it all up. Don't worry, we're going to break down every single one of these.
All right, let's kick things off with Phase 1, Clarify and Contract. This phase covers the first 2 crucial steps of our framework. It is all about laying a rock-solid foundation before you even dream of drawing a single box or arrow.
Step 1 is all about asking questions. A lot of them. Going back to our newsfeed example, you need to clarify what you're actually building. What are the absolute must-have features? Is it just scrolling and seeing posts? Or do we need likes, comments, sharing? And just as important, what's out of scope? Do we need to worry about user authentication right now, or complex data prefetching? You gotta know.
Next, you have to know who you're building this for. Are we talking about 1,000 users or 10 million users? Because that changes everything when it comes to performance and scale. Is this just a quick and dirty MVP, or is it a polished final product? And think about this. Where are people using it? An app used on a spotty subway connection has totally different challenges than one used at home on stable Wi-Fi.
And finally, you gotta clarify the constraints. Is this an iOS app, an Android app, or are we building for both? Are there any existing APIs or weird legacy systems that we have to play nice with? Nailing down these boundaries early on saves you from designing this beautiful, elegant solution that is completely impossible to actually build.
Okay, once the scope is crystal clear, you can move on to step 2, API design. And this is a really great point. What you focus on here totally depends on what you're building. If you're designing an app that talks to a server, you're going to be thinking about things like API endpoints and JSON data models. But if you're designing a library for other developers to use, your focus shifts completely to the public API. How they initialize it, how they configure it, and how their app interacts with it.
All right, we've laid our foundation, which means we can now move into Phase 2, Architect and Analyze. This is really the heart of the interview. This is where you start building the blueprint for your system and get into the nitty-gritty technical details with the interviewer.
So step 3 is all about the high-level architecture. Picture yourself at a whiteboard. You'd start drawing out the major components for our newsfeed app. You'd have your UI layer, some kind of data management layer to fetch and handle the stories, a networking client, and probably a local database for caching. The goal here is to connect all these pieces and show the interviewer that you have a clear end-to-end vision that actually works. And now for my favorite part, step 4, the deep dive. This is where the real collaboration begins. The interviewer might point to your diagram and say, okay, that looks good. Let's talk more about offline support.
What's your caching strategy here? How do you sync data when the user gets a connection again? And that's your cue to zoom in, talk about the different trade-offs, and maybe even refine your diagram as you discuss it.
We are so close. We're hitting the finish line with Phase 3, Conclude with Confidence. This final part is your chance to wrap everything up neatly and leave a really strong positive impression.
Now, step 5, the wrap-up, is technically optional, but trust me, if you have the time, this is how you really shine. Take a minute to summarize the key decisions and trade-offs you made. Talk about what you'd do next, how you might improve the design in the future. Maybe mention some failure points you didn't get to, and definitely consider how this system would scale. This shows you're not just a coder, you're a forward-thinking engineer.
So how in the world do you fit all of this into a 45-minute interview?
Well, this chart is a pretty great guideline. You'll probably spend about 5 to 10 minutes just on understanding the problem. The real meat of the interview, that deep dive, will take up about 15 to 20 minutes. But look, this is just a suggestion. The most important thing is to be aware of the clock and just go with the flow of the conversation.
And that brings us right back to our main theme. In these interviews, where problems are wide open and there are so many right answers, having a clear, repeatable process is what's going to set you apart. That methodical strategy, it's your biggest advantage.
So, if you only take one thing away from this, please let it be this. The interviewer is not looking for the one single perfect design. That doesn't even exist. What they are looking for is proof that you have a perfect process. A structured, logical way of thinking that can take any big, chaotic problem and turn it into a smart, well-reasoned solution. So the only question left is, are you ready to show it?